All right, hey everybody, this is Isaiah Colton with another podcast, Sales and Marketing Secrets podcast. And if this is your first time listening to this podcast, this is where we go over all things sales, marketing, and putting systems in place to scale your real estate business. And I'm doing a series right now where I'm interviewing some of the most powerful women that I know in real estate that I'm personally connected with that just have really awesome backstories on what they've done to hit six figures and beyond in the real estate business. And I have one of my dear friends of over 20 years, Caitlin O'Connor, here with me today. And she's going to talk about her story in real estate and the moves she's made to just have a thriving career in the Rochester market. So Caitlin, so excited to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me too. It is
So
crazy
Caitlin,
that it's been 20 years.
I know.
We have a lot of history together.
Yeah, we do, and it's been awesome to reconnect with you. My first question for the audience is I'd like people to get to know you a little bit, and I think that some of the moves that you've made and the success that you've had in your career have been awesome, and can even actually make it more challenging when you're already having success in one career, because you didn't, just a little bit about about Caitlin. She didn't actually leave real estate or go to real estate because she had to. She was already making high six figures at her current job, and then decided to do real estate part-time. And that's a really interesting place for a lot of people, because a lot of people can get stuck in a job potentially, and then making that transition away from that W-2 income can be a real challenge. And she's found a way to navigate that. So we'll dive a little bit into that. But just Caitlin, just tell everybody a little bit about your backstory leading up to real estate and why you decided to actually get into real estate.
Yeah, great question. I have been, my background was in sales and marketing. As you know, you and I kind of started out in the industry, in the kind of .com industry over 20 years ago. And that started where, I had a lot of phone sales experience. We were together for, I think about, probably 7 or 8 years. And at the time of us working together, which was, an internet-based marketing company, I had purchased my first home, which was $100,000. I love saying that. I got the Obama $8,000.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so I got that.
Yeah, my first home was the Obama eight grand too. I remember that. I think we were probably a year apart. I think you got yours a year before me or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And at the time, my now ex-husband and I were using this real estate agent that was like a family friend, and we would show up. We'd show up at showings. I mean, and this guy, he'd come from fly fishing, and he was a character, and he was really funny. But I think we were the only. I think he maybe sold one home a year, right? And I didn't even know what to expect out of a realtor at all. It was just like, yeah, and I didn't even know what questions to ask. I was just like, okay, how much should we pay for this house? Whatever. So anyways, I didn't realize like how important a real estate agent was, and like, hey, maybe I could do this, until we went under contract. And when we went under contract, I'm like, okay, so what's the next step? What needs to happen? And navigating that process, like, I learned everything about it, and I realized, I'm like, wow, like, if he can do this, like, I can do this. However, you can't really, in your 20s, you're so scared, you got bills, and it's a straight commission job, and I'm like, I can't do that. I just bought a house. So anyhow, I started to look at real estate jobs with a salary, and tried to find anything in the real estate industry where I'm like, well, maybe I can get paid doing this. And I happened to stumble across a company that was a real estate coaching and prospecting company looking for salespeople that was a base pay plus commission. So I walked in, interviewed with the company. At that time, was just leaving the company that we worked at together. I interviewed with the company, and they were like, okay, you can have a prospecting job. You can make calls to like FSBOs and expireds, and we're going to pay you an hourly rate. And I was like, no, that's not going to work. Who's your top salesperson here?
I love this story. Yeah.
And so their top salesperson, he comes in the room and I'm like, how much money do you make? And he was like, how? And so they were totally thrown off because I knew I came from a phone sales background, and I'm like, you're not hiring me at an hourly rate. Like I'm going into sales.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh, I make like 150 a year. I was like, okay, great. That's perfect. And so like I asked him a couple questions. He leaves the room and I said to the president of the company, I said, um, so I want a sales job and I won't be able to work here unless like I instantly have the ability to make commission. And so she's like, I don't know, I need to like talk to the owner about this. And I said, and I can't take your hourly rate. So got to make this much, whatever. So anyhow, I ended up starting there and I was prospecting for sale by owners and expireds for agents. And I was selling the service to them 50% of the time. Um, and then within 30 days, probably 30 to 60 days, they realized like I had a very high closing rate.
Hmm.
And I was then deemed like the closer. So everybody else became my lead gen. No more. they they ended up just making the sales pitch and then they turned over to me and I would have really more in-depth conversations with agents where I would find out more. I talked the talk, I didn't walk the walk. So I would find out so much about their businesses and what was important and what their markets were like, and I talked to some real clowns. Like
Right.
like I was like, what in the hell? Like, is
Yeah.
this? And by the way, there's so many great agents, but I realized that, I talk to agents that I'm like, how do they do this business?
Yeah.
So anyhow, fast forward, lo and behold, it wonderful company, um, great mentor and owner of the company. I still have a lot of respect for him today. But I'm 10 years in there and COVID hits.
Mm.
Now, by the way, I was making like probably if this matters, right?
Oh, it's important
I
for
was making
context.
at one point,
Yeah.
probably about 250,000 a year.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I'm on freaking cloud nine because I'm 30 years old making $250,000 a year. That's a lot in Rochester, New York. Might not be a lot in other markets in some
Oh yeah,
cases, but
that's probably 320 in other markets, 300, 320
yeah,
markets. Yeah. Hmm.
yep. And so I was making that, and then all of a sudden, boom, I get a divorce, and didn't have any children, but divorce, you don't wish it upon your worst enemy, and that wasn't fun. So highly successful career, really poor marriage, bad choices. That's okay too. Still have the utmost respect for my ex,
Hmm.
but we move on. So mentally, it wasn't great for me, and also the real estate market started changing. So was making less and less. I was very still somewhat successful there, but then COVID hit. Um, this was like fast forward like 7 years. Now, 7 years, I had gotten remarried to a wonderful man. I had two young children, which, happy family today. So grateful for them. But COVID hit and it was the most, like many people, it was the most out of control feeling that I had ever had. And I remember just instantly feeling like I can't trust anybody.
Hmm.
Like like my company might be telling me that everything's going to be fine, but they're making moves behind the scenes
Right. You can feel it.
because when you're a small business owner, you got to protect yourself and your family. And that's what I know the owner of my company was absolutely doing, rightfully so. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. I'm like,
Hmm.
whether it is, I got goosebumps because I'm remembering these conversations.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather be scared and failing on my own because it's my own fault than to have to count on a company to
Hmm.
ever pay me a paycheck again.
Hmm.
Um, but so I continued to send our kids to daycare during COVID so I could sit on my computer and do nothing but study for the real estate, you know, the course, the exam. At that time, I then shifted my thinking and I'm like, I got to get on the phone with agents that I know are successful and I'm talking to them from a different perspective now.
Yeah.
Um, so I actually contacted the top 5 agents in Rochester. One of them is Anthony Butera. I work
Great
for
dude.
Keller.
Love that
He's
guy.
amazing.
Yeah.
He's probably upstairs now, but so I'm an agent, at his brokerage now. But I remember I emailed him and I said, "Hey, Anthony, I'm a new agent looking to like get into the industry. Like, do you have a few minutes to talk?" Now, how many emails or how many calls do you think Anthony Butera
Oh
gets
my
a
gosh, it's
day?
insane.
Or about, yeah. And so I remember his response was like, I've never even called him out on this, but his response was like, so like, yeah, sure, but we got to keep it to the point. Like he was like, you got to like, I wish I should probably go back and find the email, but it was like, yeah, sure, but like, let's keep it to the point. So like, he gave me like 30 minutes and, I just picked his brain, but it was more so like, what brokerage am I going with at that point?
Sure, sure.
And I don't think he really knew like totally what experience that I had. Long story short, I get my license. My company that I was working for at the same time, the real estate company asks me to come back, says,
Mhm.
we will guarantee you at least $100,000 a year because in COVID, you had to bring back a certain percentage of
Yep.
your employees and still be paying them what you were paying them. So they're like, we'll pay you 100,000 a year. I said, okay, well, by the way, I got my real estate license. And so the owner of the company's like, all right, well, guess what? I'll support you in your real estate business if you come back and you support me and help me get this company back off the ground.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
um, I did that and I was still committed to building my business, but I also had the owner of my company. If I had a listing appointment or I had to shadow something, he was very supportive and he let me go.
Mm.
But
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah.
job was still demanding. So I really focused, and I've been in the business for 5 years now. So I really focused on, I called for sale by owners when I was still working there. Um, Took my first listing in probably the first like 60 or about first like 30, 45 days of
Mhm.
like having my license. And he was a real estate coach. So he'd tell me every single thing to go out and say to them. He'd be like, do this, then do this, then do this. And I remember I took like 3 FSBOs like right away. Not making myself sound like I'm some big listing superstar. I'm not. So, um, but I'm like, okay, I can do this. And so,
Yeah, it was still a confidence booster, right? To say, hey, I can do this. Yeah.
yep. And I just started to, I just remember being like, I wanted it so bad that I would offer to do showings for other agents, even though I didn't have clients yet. I would do showings for other agents and I would just take pictures or take video of the showings that I was doing every single weekend. My goal was I needed to be out doing something in real estate every day, whether I was making money or not. And so my sphere would at least start seeing like, oh wow, Caitlin's always out showing houses. She's always out showing houses.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's cool.
yeah, and and eventually, by the way, none of my friends or family came running to me to sell their house or to help them buy a house, like probably within the first like 3 or 4 months in real estate. Like you think they're going to.
Yeah.
And so that's what I really did. Just started putting myself out there on social media as much as possible, um, and still obviously working my other job. My first year, I think I did 2 million my first year. I thought I was a superstar. I'm like, oh, I'm so great. Everybody loves
Yeah,
me.
but
This is
it is
amazing.
really good for your first year, right? It's good.
Yeah, but
Especially
that
our
like
market,
big.
because the average, just so for, I know I have listeners all over the country, so like our market, our average home is like half of the most, like as far as like what our home sells for on average versus like other markets. So doing 2 million in our market is like doing 3 million or 3.5 million in other markets because the average price of a home. So just to kind of keep it in perspective for our listeners.
Yeah, I think it was like 14 homes I sold.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and
So
so,
yeah,
but it was
first
funny. I
year,
like,
it's great. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was like a little, I don't know, 2 million. I don't even know how much that is. It's like
Yeah.
60 grand or something like that. But again, I was like, okay, this is good. But then in the meantime, the real estate market still ebbs and flows. Inventory's tough. our business was starting to, taper off because agents don't have a lot of money, or they're just too busy. Most importantly, there's no FISBOs or expireds in any market. So it
Yeah.
was really tough. And I'm like, okay, so I'm starting to make money in real estate. First year was great. Second year, growing pains in my day job, and it was just constant up and down, constant up and down. And I just kept saying like, oh my gosh, if I can only make just as much money as I'm making in my day job in real estate, then I'll leave.
Mm.
And I had two babies. They were 17 months apart. So I had two kids back to
Wow.
back. And my husband has, a demanding job too. So it was hard. Like, I mean, I was away from my family Saturdays, Sundays, writing offers and coaching my buyers at night, trying to get my kids to bed. So the first couple years in this was like, you know, doing that was tough.
Yeah.
But
Tough.
totally. And this, and you, in our market, so thin, it's like it takes 13 offers to get a buyer under contract. However, I told you I could ramble, but what I think that I really had to hone in on and what made me successful, leading into my second year, I think I did like 6 million my second year, still part time, but I failure was not an option. And I also didn't have a ton of time to be submitting a gazillion offers for my buyers.
Right.
So my time with my family was so important that I just took the sales ability and experience that I had to really sit down and coach my buyers, make sure
Mm.
that they had full, like such a clear understanding of what the market was.
That's
Um,
so powerful.
yeah, and understanding like the power of understanding at what lender offers what product, different financing, because you have to be able to, it's not just here's a bank, call them and get pre-approved. It's, wait, we have a million different products out here. Let me make sure that I'm aligning you with the right product so
Yeah.
we can be successful in this market. So that was like so important, but I just had to be so precise in the buyers that I was working with and the listings that I had that I think that I say I write a gazillion offers. My first 3 years, I didn't write more than 5 offers for one buyer.
Wow.
And some buyers you would hear stories that they were like,
Oh,
oh my
success
gosh, like,
stories. Yeah.
yeah, like, oh my gosh, I wrote 20 offers. It's been a year. And by the way, the last like 6 months has been very different.
Let's
But
let's dive a little bit. Let's dive a little bit into that. How did you coach, or just maybe two or three bullet points on what you did to coach them to make that work? Because I know there's a ton of people, even in today's market, that are still experiencing similar things depending on where you're in the country. Just maybe two or three bullet points on how you'd coach your buyer.
yeah, so absolutely have to have a buyer's consultation, like no matter who it is, because I think sometimes like you might have like a friend come to you and say, oh, let's go look at this house or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. So I think sometimes people like skate over doing that and they shouldn't. But I would always, first and foremost, I'd sit down with them and they would hear, I would say, tell me what you know about the real estate market right now.
Mm.
And you'd hear, well, we heard the market's crazy and it's so hard. And I just tell them up front, like my goal first and foremost is to make sure that we get you a home, but that you feel comfortable and you feel like you can trust me and my guidance. And we have open communication along the way.
Mm.
And I'm going to make sure that I set you up with a plan so we can win. And I just first build a ton of trust with them.
Mhm.
We assume people know things like I feel like we assume like, oh, well, they know that it's going to be hard to get it, or they've got to have this, they have to have money in their savings account. I'm sure they have money. The hard conversations, all those things need to happen up front.
Yes.
And so I would tell them, I first give them just a synopsis of the market. And then I sit down and just really ask a lot of questions, like what's important to them. And then I also will show them examples of, hey, let me show you some comps. Where are you interested? You like this neighborhood? Okay, let's look at this neighborhood. Let me show you before we get out there in the market. Let me show you the list to sale price. Let me show you, the percentage over asking. And hey, by the way, I actually had a listing over here or in a similar neighborhood. Let me show you the offer spreadsheet
Mm,
of a listing that I've recently had and how we compare offers next to each other. So then they're actually able to look at, blindly. I'm not showing them people's information, but I show them like, hey, when we're a buyer and we're submitting an offer, this is what we're up against.
mm,
So I do that in a way, so bullet points, build trust. Secondly, find out everything about them and what their interests, what their wants and needs are. Um, Educate them on the market, and then finally align them with the right financing.
mm,
So,
mm,
premium mortgage, prime lending here in Rochester, there are two major competitors, but they're two big lenders. The nuances of their financing are very different. Like one has like a cash guarantee, or the other one has a cash guarantee. But if you can't do 20% down, they might have other programs that are also enticing. So I align them with the best financing possible. And then once they've done that, then we get back together, we recap, and we come up with a plan from there.
You know what I love about what you're doing is you're in the process of building that trust. You're also making the expectations so clear, and that way they know what to expect. So many relationships, I think, personal and business, don't work out because of
Hmm.
expectations, and because not taking the time to do what you're doing up front in detail with all those steps that you just laid out. And while you have a strong standard for that, and maybe it takes a little bit more time, energy, and money up front, you're saving yourself 10 times the time, money, and hassle on the back end, because you now have somebody, because they know you, like you, trust you, they're more coachable to what you have to share with them, because what they're experiencing out in the marketplace is what you already explained to them. And so it just codifies or concretes that trust and that relationship as you're going, so they're going to be more likely to continue to be coachable, because you already shared with them what to expect. And that's what I love about this, because I think any great coach, consultant, advisor, expert, this is what they're really good at. They're really good at helping people really understand how, okay, this is your goal, right? This is the reality of what you're going to deal with, and I'm here to help you get through this reality of what you deal with. And it just sounds like you have such a really good process to doing that. So I just love that for our audience, because there's so many people, they get so excited, you know. So like you said, sometimes it's like they'll make an exception because it's their brother's cousin, or like, and they don't follow their process or whatever it may be. And or they don't really, they're changing their process, maybe because they don't even have a process,
Yeah.
and or whatever it may be. But that's what I love, is that you have a really strong standard of how you do this, and as a result, I mean, if you look at all the buyers you've ever worked with, and let's say you never, average was 4 or 5 showings compared to 10 to 15 or whatever the number is. I'd like to know what the average is actually. It'd be interesting. But you to look at the time, money, and energy that you saved yourself and saved your clients through this strategy, just absolutely awesome. Huge. If I could give you a high five and a hug, like, oh, so like, really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, also and I took it so seriously, I think, and I think I did that, and I was so invested because I realized I don't have time. Every lead that I had was like,
Mm,
this is not like, I have a
mm,
buyer, I might only get two new buyers a month. Or this is like, I don't own it with a full-time job. Like, I need to make sure who I have
mm-hmm.
in front of me. I I need to build a reputation and build my referrals. And,
Right.
not just because that you have to have a true, genuine,
Yeah. But
like
it's
want to help
yeah,
people. But
you're
like it's not law of numbers for me. And it wasn't then or even now, because every single person that said I want to buy a home, it's like, oh no, this is my money from real estate now.
right.
And I'm so competitive that like I wanted to create a decent name for myself, or at least a good reputation, because that's important in our industry when you're when you're getting offers accepted. And yeah.
That's huge.
So, but yeah, I didn't have time to like let them go. So I didn't want to waste time and not do those things up front.
Yeah, and going from 2 million to 6 million, and where you are now, I think the message here in the next 5 minutes before we kind of start wrapping up this podcast is that I got is a lot of you, some of you are thinking that you have a lack of resources, and that might be time, money, or energy, and that's stopping you mentally from going to the next level. If you heard Caitlin's story, it actually served her. She, instead of saying, "Oh, I don't have this resource, I don't have the time because of my kids, or because I have a full-time job, or whatever it may be," she said, "You know what? I'm going to be instead of focusing on the lack of resources, I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to focus on being resourceful." And and that resourcefulness came out and manifested itself through her time, or her understanding that how important time was. And so she used that time restriction to actually be more powerful, to be better, to serve more, to help more, to do more. And I think that if people just take that away, and that can, like, that mindset is so powerful, is when you stop saying to yourself, "I can't because I don't have this, so therefore I can't," or all of those conversations that go on in our head. And the other thing that I kind of took from your story too is that burning desire to figure it out. You had an
Mm.
experience that happened. You said, "Screw that. I'm not going to do this anymore." And so failure became not an option. And so I think oftentimes, whether it's real estate or anything else, until you tap into that whatever that burning desire is, when you go to hit a wall, if you don't have that why, that burning desire that's going to help you push through that wall, you tend to make a few more excuses, or let your say, "Hey, this or that," or whatever it may be. And so those are the two big things that I just took away from your story. And kind of fast forwarding from here now, just kind of wrapping up,
Yeah.
Caitlin, like what, like, like you made a decision to leave, that had to been, you leave your job, that had been tough.
Yep.
And just a couple pieces of advice around tough decisions before we wrap it up.
Yeah, so finally we talked about 5 million, and I actually just recently, so I was heading into this is my fifth year, right? In real estate, and last May, and what you said, you absolutely have to have a burning desire to want to get. My desire was, I want to leave my day job and I want to have a successful real estate career. And my burning desire was like, okay, I'm year four in this, and I'm now making, my goal was to make just as much of my day job as I am in real estate. I exceeded my sales, my day job in real estate income. And I decided to leave. I was so scared. I will give my husband a lot of credit because he didn't make that decision for me, but he helped. What's that?
He nudged you.
Well, he said it was the support. It was like
Mm,
when you have a family and you are so afraid. I was more afraid of letting my family down than I was
hmm
failure.
hmm
Like, I didn't care about failure. But I'm like, I don't want to let my family down. Like, what if this doesn't take off as
Right.
quickly? And my husband's like, Caitlin, just do it. Just do
I love that.
it. He's like,
That's
just do it. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, you've shown so much success. You've worked so hard. I could cry. He's like, you worked so hard for this.
yes.
And I laughed. It was very, very hard. Um, I remember the day after I left, I woke up and I did absolutely nothing. And then I met a couple of my girlfriends and I had drinks for lunch. And then we left and went on a 10-day vacation.
Good for
And
you. Yeah, that's important. Yeah. No, but
but
like having that space in between is a little bit of space
yeah.
in between is important. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very hard decision, but I think what you really need to do is like, just get real with what you want, and not, I can say don't be afraid, but everybody's going to be afraid. But also, what I will say is, I never thought that I was ready because I would constantly be looking at other agents' businesses from the outside looking in.
Right.
And
Yep.
I'd always think that I wasn't ready because I'm like, oh, but I'm not put together like the Property Girls they're a very successful team here in Rochester. And but I didn't think I'd look at people's businesses and thought that they had it all together. And they had a plan when they did this, and they look so good and they're doing this. And it's like
Right.
the truth is like everybody looks great from the outside in, but remember that nobody's ready, totally ready when they do it. They just if you can cover your base, your bills, or you got to get a side job to like cover your bills or whatever you're doing, just do it. And I did continue to consult a little bit because that was like, well, if this doesn't
Yeah, you
work
gotta do
out,
what you
then
gotta do.
I'm not
Yeah.
closing the door. But that's
Right.
what I did. And I think that's what you need to do. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, what is like? What's your next big milestone? And what do you see for yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So, my next big milestone. So this past year I did about 10 million, and that was still like I was still at my full-time job until like May, like I said. And then so I hired a transaction coordinator. That was like a big move. She's
That's big.
absolutely wonderful. She also allowed me to work my full-time job and
Yeah.
be able to handle the amount of transactions. But my next big move is I am really creating strong systems within my business. I'm leveling up my branding this year. I just invested like 7,000 into a custom website so I can get my newsletters going and have call to actions in my newsletters. Before we got on the phone here, I was prospecting my past clients in my database. So my goal this year is I would love to do, my goal is to still be an individual agent, but I'd love to do $20 million and build a solid foundation as far as my systems. So when I do bring anybody on my team, they're
It's
set up for
it's
success.
rock solid. They can just step into it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
Cool.
I want to invest
Final.
myself in more education this year
Right.
too. Spend
Right.
more time doing that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So final word for advice for anybody that is trying to they're trying to level up. They might have a tough decision to make. Any words of wisdom or advice? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. We think that we're so different from everybody else, and like I said, we feel like everyone's got it put together. Every business is, the realtors like has a great business. Just start somewhere, and be authentic in what you're trying to do. So me, it's like I could invest in Zillow, but my choice is to not do that. My choice is to really double down and be authentic and be a great person within my sphere, and love on them like crazy. So what was your question? I want to make sure I answer that more
no, yeah,
fully.
just like any words of wisdom that you have for anybody making a tough choice, or but I think this
Yeah.
one of the things I just caught there is you have like a lot of people are all over with their lead generation. You like that's a huge thing is like you you making a decision and double like being convicted about that decision with your lead generation is huge. And it's not that you can't diversify, but a lot of people they try to do too many things with their lead generation at once, and I see that mistake a lot. So
Hmm.
I think that's a good piece of advice is don't if something's working, don't do less of it, do more of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And be genuine, be
right.
authentic because
Mhm.
that goes so far. And that's when people become your lead gen machines. Like
That's right.
I have several clients that refer people to me every single month. And it's
Yep.
because if they hear somebody's buying a house, it's like you can't use anybody but her.
Right.
So just be genuine and be thorough, and don't ignore phone calls. Pick up the phone and talk to your clients throughout the process. Don't just text. Um, just be old school too. you know,
Well,
take
yeah.
everything that we know and just, yeah,
Yeah.
communication, love on people.
Yeah, it's the superpower that most people don't give anymore, or don't
Yeah.
have anymore. Is that old school love and attention?
And also just come from a place of contribution, whether it's your clients, whether it's other agents, because relationships are everything. this week, because the market's thin, I sent feelers out to all the agents I know of what houses I was looking for.
Oh,
And they've worked with me before. They've talked to me, and I've shown 4 off market properties this week. So
so-
it's like, but you just be just a good person all around, and love other realtors, because they can be your key to success too.
mm,
And that's a whole nother conversation, right?
yes, there's a lot of wisdom there. We could do a whole other podcast on that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Caitlin, thank you so
Hope I
much.
didn't talk too much.
No, this is great. I know people are going to absolutely love hearing the transition, the story, and the wisdom that came out of it. This has been awesome, and I took a lot away from myself. Some things that
Oh,
I need to train,
thanks.
some things that I need to train and coach on more, because sometimes in the world of technology and the world of all of these different options in marketing, we have to remember the core is authenticity. It has to be
Hmm.
authenticity, and having a burning desire, and some of the other things that we talked about, right? So I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time and attention, and I know people are going to get a lot out of it. So thanks for telling your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to find me, can find me on Instagram at Caitlin O'Connor Real Estate. I love talking with other women about, I say women, I love men too. But I love networking with other agents that are kind of at similar spots in their business as well. So
Awesome. Is that if somebody
it's
has a
great.
referral for you, maybe even like if my audience is out, like somebody has a referral to Rochester, is that the best way to get a hold of you too, or
Yeah,
is it?
Caitlin O'Connor Real Estate on, Instagram or Facebook, Caitlin O'Connor, or you can find me online, my phone number, everything is right there.
Sounds
But
great.
and I have a lot
Well,
to learn from you too. I'm quite sure. We don't spend enough time or talk enough. So
I know. This was a great excuse to reconnect. So
I know. Seriously.
awesome. Thanks.